6:30, and I am calling the order of the Grand Island Public School Board Education meeting. This is August 10th, 2023 meeting. Notice of this meeting has been advertised, in the Grand Island Independent, which is the district design method of giving advance notice of these meetings. We want those in attendance to know that copies of the Open Meeting Act are available at the entrance of the boardroom. If anyone in attendance is interested in addressing our board, you are welcome to do so. We simply request that you complete the appropriate form and turn it in to us so that we may recognize during the request and address the board part of our meeting. If you have not already completed the form, please see the staff person outside the entrance to this room. Public comment is welcome. We do ask that no signs be brought into the boardroom. Mrs. Dibbert, will you please call the roll?
Mr. McFarland, he has given prior notice and his absence has been granted. Mr. Helinski.
Here.
Mr. Garcia Mendez.
Present.
Mr. Hawley.
Here.
Mrs. Wilson. Mrs. Albers? Here. Mr. Sykes?
Here.
Mrs. Durkins?
Present.
Ms. Maudlin has given prior notice that she is running late.
All right, moving along here. The first item on the agenda tonight is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is to be approved as follow, which consists of items 3.1 through items 3.8. This is the consent agenda as published. Would anyone like to remove any items or add any items to the consent agenda? Does anyone have any potential conflict of interest with agenda items? Or so please state the check number or you'll be abstaining from voting on. All right, then I need a motion for the approval of the consent agenda. Mrs. Albers.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Mr. Hawley, second. All right, everyone vote. And the consent agenda passes. Moving on to special recognition. Item 4.1. 34 students will be recognized for stellar results in their respective AP tests from the 472 AP test taken by all students. Honorees of the board meeting earned the titles of AP Scholar with Honors, and AP Scholar with Distinction. Mr. Dr. Dahl.
Good evening, Board of Education. Welcome. We have a number of AP scholars. We're going to bring them in and then honor them after they get here. It's a small enough group that everyone can fit on the stage. AP scholars are the first group we'll recognize. They'll be on Matt's right side. The next group is AP Scholars with Honor, and they'll be closer to Matt. Lastly is the group AP Scholars with Distinction. And this is going to be a rolling event. We're not going to do it all year, but we're going to also offer this next month as an opportunity, so there might be some students who don't come tonight. We won't give the full presentation a month from now, but we just want to give those students a chance and their families to be honored. Also, I apologize, but welcome to the parents who are here, and I think we're ready.
Okay.
So coming in the room are the AP Scholars. Oh, we can do that way? Sure. All right. Samuel Acosta Castellanos? Sorry. We would prefer people who are here. Easton Brown. Sydney Brown. Caitlin O'Neill. Charlie Phillips. Neri Raimundo. Annika Staub. Ava Stein. And Benjamin Thurston. And as I said just a moment ago, since we have a small group tonight, we're just going to bring everyone in. So AP Scholar folks, just wait for a second. We have our next group, which are AP Scholars with Honor. And I'll just read the names of the folks who are here. We'll come back to the, sorry. All right. Alan Gonzalez. Kenny Morales. And Avery Rogers. And in the last group, AP Scholars with Distinction, Zachary Cloutier and Mason Mesmer. And did anyone else show up afterwards? All right, well, we have a lot of AP Scholars to honor. Let's give them a round of applause since they're here.
Mr. Fisher and Mr. Holinsky, if you'd like to come out for a photo. Students, if you could, let's squash in the middle here, and we're going to take a photo of everyone all together. And then when I'm done taking my photo, parents, you can come up and grab a photo as well if you'd like.
And at the end, I have some added distinctions to share about each of the students.
Squeeze in a little bit. Wonderful. Perfect. All right, look at me. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Wonderful. Hold it. If anyone else wants to come up and get a photo, you can. Go for it. All right. Thank you.
I'm going to run through some specific distinctions of this group. And where did Dr. Palmer go? While I'm just calling out some things about each of the folks, you'll be skipping one to get to each one, but they're still alphabetical. So our AP Scholar Recognition Program has grown quite a bit. We've had an increase in students each year with AP tests. This year we had 123 new students taking AP exams. And that can be shown by that number, total AP students, 293 as well. I'm counting also the number of exams that were increased. Next, if you notice about the scores on the exams, we basically increased in all of our scores. So we have more students getting 1s, more students getting 2s, more who are getting 3s, 4s, and 5s. That's good news. We want to see those increases. At the same time, sometimes we're going to find that the more we take AP exams, our grades are also going to continue to rise. So for students who are already graduated seniors or who are not able to be here, we wish them the best in college and that these scores represent their amazing work. But for those of you who are seniors this year, who are staying in school, you've got time on the clock and you may continue to take APs and score well. We could go through the highlights of what the exams are. I would just mention that biology, English language, macroeconomics, and world history were the ones that have the most students taking them. Those 4 tests, greater than 50 students in each. And last year, I invited students who had earned 4s and 5s but were not recognized by the state as AP Scholars. I invited everybody to this meeting because I wanted to just have a great time recognizing students. At the same time, there were a lot of students here, and it was kind of confusing, and I own that. So this year, the students who earned 4s and 5s but were not recognized as scholars, they're going to get a letter in the mail from myself and Matt Fisher and the Board of Education representative and or Jeff Gilbertson. But we want to recognize those students, but we didn't want to create a meeting where there's just too many people, because that'd be greater than 20 students in addition to who's here and who's not here. So as you can see, who's here is a total of 34 students. I have a couple more honors just to mention. At the beginning on the first slide of this, I mentioned that I was also going to call out some ACT highlights. So just a couple of highlights to call out. Charlie, who's in the room, has the district highest score in the ACT English of 35. And that's a tie score. We'll get to who he's tied with in a moment. Also, Benjamin Thurston has the district highest score in science at 34. Congrats. Some of you might notice that I like color. My colleagues would probably laugh. Everything I do has different colors. But if you notice that there's a couple of stars next to folks' names, that means that they were AP Scholars last year also. And they were familiar names. I had their parents on speed dial, and it was very easy to invite them to tonight's meeting. And I'm glad that everyone who's shown up is here. So with that, you'll kind of, you'll recognize that when we go to the next group. So scholars with honor, you notice all the green stars. Those are folks who were scholars last year. And you also notice those little plus signs that are light purple. Those are folks that had 4s and 5s last year that we also had come to the meeting. So I know Avery is one of those students, and we welcome them. And a couple of other distinctions. Avery also has the district highest score, the other tie, for district highest in English. And you get to clap one more time for Avery. She also had the highest score in reading. And as you can see, I like the farming theme. Last we have the Scholars of Distinction who are here. And we did have a couple of honors for Bodie, who I think is planning to come to next month's meeting. But just to mention it, he has the district highest composite score, and that's of an AP score of 33. Also, I would add that he has the district highest STEM score on the ACT of 34, and the district highest math score of 36, which is a perfect 36. One added thing I would mention, some years we have a student who scores 36 on the composite. When that happens, they get recognized in Lincoln and they're in a big picture. That doesn't happen every year though, and this year it didn't, so Bodie was our highest scorer. And also we just wanted to recognize everyone who's done amazing work, not only on the AP exams, which all of you have done, but also on the ACT. So with that, I just want to say a huge congratulations to you all. You've done great work, and we believe in you. You're going to do great things to come. So be a light, continue your work. Thank you. Sorry. We might want to give these out before you leave. And parents, when we give them their certificate, if you want to get one more picture, you're welcome to. Apologies that we didn't get those out a second ago. Who are we missing? Ellen? Ellen Gonzalez? Who's missing? Your first name? Sorry, I might not have fast. We had an extra stack. All right. Thank you, Board of Education, for being patient with us. Are we all awarded? Parents, if you'd like to get a picture that has the certificates in it, please come. Congrats, folks. All right, great accomplishments, you all. So next month, we might honor some of your friends that weren't here tonight. Please encourage them to come. And thank you again. Awesome work.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Dr. Dahl? Mr. Dr. Dahl. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Dahl. Appreciate it.
Sure. I'll be back for a couple of other items later.
Okay. Moving right along here to item number 5, request to address the board. Each person addressing the board will be allowed 5 minutes. The Board of Education has a prerogative to limit speaking to 3 minutes when there are 3 or more patrons to allow speakers an opportunity to address the board in a timely manner. We allocate up to 30 minutes for addressing the board at each regular board meeting. Please face the board and not the audience when you speak. We want to hear what is being said, so we ask that the audience refrain from making comments or sounds that make it hard to hear the speaker. No signs are allowed in the boardroom. We will not engage in dialogue with patrons presenting the board. The purpose of the request is to address the board, is to listen to the patrons. The board president and superintendent will identify staff to follow up on any information requested from the patrons when necessary. Regular business meetings, any school district related matter can be presented to the board, but only agenda items can be acted upon during the given meeting. At special meetings, comments will be limited to the subject of the action items and the meeting's agenda. Speakers will not be permitted to make defamatory comments or abusive or vulgar language. Expression of personal complaints about staff or students are discouraged at public meetings. Concerns about individuals should be brought to the attention of the appropriate administrative authority. Specific building or program concerns should be brought to the attention of the building principal or program advisor. We do have 2 tonight, and so we call up Mr. James Tews. Please state your name in the microphone and your address.
My name is James Tews, and my address is 3003 West Dolly Park Road in Grand Island. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the board and Mr. Fisher. Today I'd like to talk about a subject with which I know you are intimately familiar, yet you have little control over, and that is the Nebraska School Choice Bill that passed the legislature back at the end of the session and signed by the governor. This isn't for me to take a political stance, but this is to share a cautionary tale from my own experiences. I came here, some of you may know, from Florida 5 years ago. I worked for Broward County Public Schools there as an administrator. And during that time was a time of an increase in the amount of public education dollars going to private schools. And that came in the form of scholarships, it came in the form of charter schools, and it came in another form of vouchers that went to pre-K students. All I can say really is that it was an unmitigated disaster in Florida for the public schools. This is something that I think that people here don't realize. It's great, it sounds great in talking points when they sell it. It sounds so innocuous. This is going to help students, underprivileged students, get this great education. It's going to help students who are being bullied in our schools to go to a school where they won't be bullied, because that wouldn't happen at a private school. And what it really turns into is de facto discrimination, is what I've experienced. The schools that accepted these vouchers became full very quickly. So new schools started popping up because they saw a great opportunity to make money. And so in places like here in Grand Island, where maybe Office Depot went out of business, someone will move in and open Joe's private school over here. And with very little authority from the state, they would open that and they would solicit students. They would go and they would visit the students who are currently enrolled at public schools, and they would cherry pick. And they say, well, we don't discriminate against race or socioeconomic status, but they do, because what they would do is say, all we require is that parents donate 10 hours per week working in our school, that's it. But we don't discriminate. Well, working parents don't have 10 hours a week to volunteer in those schools. And so there you go, those students are left behind. And it just continues where they would cherry pick through our students, and they would go on recruiting runs, and they knew the students that they wanted. And so slowly our school started the population would get lower and lower and lower. And so that forced us to go on recruiting runs too. And even our kindergarten roundup, which we used to do in May for incoming kindergartners, we had to move up to April, and then they would move theirs up to March. And we ended up doing ours in February simply because we had to stay ahead of the competition for students. And it had become such a competitive industry, I'd like to say it, that sometimes we would just lose focus on really what we were trying to do, is serve these students, because we were just trying to get students to serve at that time. And then to top it off, these schools, Joe's private school over here that went into an abandoned Target or whatever, they would take our students, they would have them throughout the school year until sometimes end of February, and we had this happen 3 times, and then they say, you know what, we're not really making a profit, and our students aren't really gaining anything, so let's just call it quits here, take the money we have, let's chain the doors, and then we would have lines at our public schools at the end of February, beginning of March, just in time to take the state exams. And then, of course, there are students, so they take the exams, our scores plummet, and then that was the headline, is Broward County schools, public schools, scores plummet, and they can't tell the whole story, which is that the reason is because they didn't learn anything at some of these other schools. And I'm not here to disparage the parochial schools here at all. And the governor says that competition is good. And in cases that is true. And we do have competition with these schools right now. But when they talk about school choice, we have school choice in this district. Elementary schools, if they don't like the school they're going to, if there's room, they can go to any school in this district, and we accept them. The same with the middle schools. And in the high school, you have so much choice right there. That's what the academies are. We have so many different choices. And I just would hate to see happen here what had happened to my school in Florida. And that's one of the things that really led me here back to Nebraska, is the I Heart Public School shirts. I actually got one of those because I was going to UNL and taking my doctorate classes there, and I wore it in Florida, and people thought it was a joke. They actually said, oh, I love your shirt. And I said, no, it's not a joke, but that's what it's been reduced to because of all this competition. So once again, I know you don't have any control over this right here, but I feel that we do have an opportunity to reach out to people and let them know what can happen with our schools, and I'd hate to see that to our great district here. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tews. All right, next up, we have our own Danielle Helzer. Mrs. Helzer, if you could please state your name and your address into the microphone.
Sure. My name is Danielle Helzer. I live at 4246 Nevada Avenue, and I'm actually going to pass out. I brought a handout from Open Sky Policy Institute that I'll reference in this statement. Okay, so good evening, Board of Education. Thank you so much for your service, for your commitment to students and to teachers. Like I said, my name's Danielle Helzer. I'm a parent of 2 GIPS students. Both will be freshmen this year at Gish. My husband Nate is a principal at Grand Island Senior High. I was also a high school English teacher for 8 years in Nebraska's rural, suburban, and urban public schools before moving into the nonprofit sector. And currently, I am one of the organizers in the Tri-Cities for putting LB 753, which Mr. Tews just kind of spoke about, for putting LB 753 to a vote of the people. And I am speaking today because I'm encouraging all of the board members to sign the petition to let the people of Nebraska decide if they want to retain or repeal LB 753. So there has not been a time in my life where I haven't been involved in education. I'm speaking to you tonight because while I no longer work in public schools, I care deeply for them. They've shaped me into the active citizen I am today. Teaching diverse students in public schools expanded my worldview and made me realize that there was more to the world than the context from which I came. Public schools are one of the only remaining institutions in our society that are truly open to all people. I mean, think about it. How many institutions are open that are truly open to all people without the expectation to purchase anything. Not much left in our society. Okay? Public schools are one of those great institutions that remain in our society, open to all people, no matter what. So if it remains law, LB 753 will wreak havoc on public education in our state. Open Sky Policy Institute has detailed the detrimental impacts of this bill. I've included a recent article by them, and I trust that you're going to read that on your own time and learn a little bit about the financial implications that would happen to public schools. What I want to emphasize most tonight, though, are the reasons that you should sign the petition given your role as citizens elected to serve a public school. So first, there are a lack of accountability measures in place for LB 753. So under the current bill, private schools will receive taxpayer funding without any accountability for how that money is spent, unlike public schools that have to abide by certification requirements, a rigorous slate of testing, etc. Public school staff spend an inordinate amount of time on these accountability requirements, while private schools will be able to do whatever they want with taxpayer funding. Next, and this is one of the most alarming things for me about this bill, is that this bill passed in the State House without a substantial anti-discrimination amendment, despite one being proposed. So there was an anti-discrimination amendment proposed, and the majority of our senators struck it down. That's concerning, because private schools can and do discriminate against students with IEPs, with trauma histories, LGBTQ plus identities, citizenship status, students whose the first language is not English, because they don't have the staff. Public schools, on the other hand, they do their very best with very little funding and high accountability measures to provide a high quality education for all students no matter their backgrounds. If we continue to subsidize wealthy donors for donating to private education and not to public education, our legislature's general fund will become strained, thereby impacting public schools and the most vulnerable students who private schools can and will continue to turn away. And finally, for the last few years, for whatever reason, public schools and their staff have come under attack, ensuring that all of their students feel seen, feel heard, feel respected, and feel valued. And Grand Island Public Schools, folks, it's no exception. Okay? Our teachers have come under attack last election cycle for ensuring that all students that walk through the doors in their classroom feel seen, feel heard, feel cared for, and feel respected. There is a lack of support for public education all throughout our state and in our community. And signing this petition and coming out with public support for the referendum would be an excellent morale booster for staff, for so many staff who this summer, guess what they did? They spent time peddling petitions, gathering signatures. It would be a morale booster for families. It would be a morale booster for the students that you are elected to represent. So, finally, I'm just going to end and close by saying, just please remember that you are elected to serve Grand Island Public Schools, not private schools. You're not elected to serve your own self-interest for that matter. So I would highly encourage you to find a location to sign. There are signature events coming up, and this weekend there'll be signatures gathering events on 4th Street, Monday at the library, and there are so many people in our community that carry petitions on them, and you can sign at any point in time. So thanks for your consideration. Thanks for your service to public schools.
Great. Thank you, Mrs. Helzer. All right, moving right along to item 6.1. Item 6.1 with Dr. Dahl be the assessment for 2023-2024, which includes the Amos Webb and also the update for the role of each building assessment coordinator.
Good evening again, Board of Education. In recent months, we've been working really hard to make sure all of our assessments for this school year are ready to kick off and all go without flaws. Last year, as a summary point that you may not have heard, our testing went flawlessly last year. We didn't have a single testing irregularity all year long that we had to report to the state and go through an entire accountability cycle. And I hope that we'll make this year 2 years on that. But we have some changes in testing that I think are significant enough that we just want to mention them here, and they're all just positive things. But I just want to bring them to the board's attention so you know, because if things are a little bit different than they were last year, it's good that we share that information here. So first, there's that beautiful graphic. I credit that to Mr. Corey Gearhart and also Dr. Robin Dexter, and just our team kind of put together a graphic that explained how often we give tests and what tests they were. Science and ELPA are easy. There was no change in those bottom rows. But it's just ELA and math where there's some changes. You notice DIBELS on the top row is the same as it was last year, but you'll notice under that is AIMSweb. It's a new test. We gave it a number of years ago, and we were starting AIMSweb again at the middle school level. And also you notice that AIMSweb is in the math rows also, not only at middle school, but it even shows up as once per year in the 5th grade. So those are some changes. Everything else kind of stays static, but I just want to give some priority to that in a few minutes. So before I come back to that, I want to mention another test change. The National Academic Education Progress Exam. I need to check my federal abbreviations, but the NAEP exam is something that we got the invitation from the state. Well, I have to be clear, it's not an invitation. It's a kind of a wedding. You have to go. But so we have 5 schools that are participating in NAEP this year, and it's required. And the good news is, I was talking with Kay Crow, who coordinated the NAEP last time it was here. The state will send people to the schools that are doing it. They will fully conduct it. So we don't need to worry about it. It happens in January and February at those 5 schools listed. So Howard, Seething Mile, West Lawn, and also Barrow Middle School and Walnut Middle School. Dr. Dexter and Dr. Palmer and I will have a talk together just to decide if we need to scale back any of the testing in the winter for those 5 schools, because we want students to give their best showing on the NAEP test when we don't want to, if I could say it, tire them out on other district testing that we're doing. So that's a decision we haven't made, but we'll have that discussion. And that brings me to our beginning point about the MAP test. We are no longer going to be giving the MAP test in reading or English language arts in this district. Grades K through, with the exception of English language learners who can use it for a progress monitoring tool, we still have access. But we've stopped giving that as a Tier 1 test, and the reason is we're already using DIBELS in the elementary school, and we don't want to double test students, because double testing leads to half of your effort goes in one and half in the other, and then we wonder why the scores don't show improvements. So I'm kind of going through some of the changes that are in the elementary, and the first one there is that the MAP ELA is no longer going to be given. The MAP math will still be given, K through 5. Be given all year except at the end of the year. When we get to the NSCAS exam, we won't give the MAP and the NSCAS. We, again, don't want to double test. And the NSCAS is the same as normal, so no need to explain that. Point number 2 about elementary, which says AIMSweb will be done in 5th grade. I just want to hold on that for a second and just remind again, AIMSweb is going to be given in our middle schools. The principals in the middle schools came to us and said, we'd like to give AIMSweb. It gives a lot better progress monitoring. It's a lot easier to understand. The reports are a lot more accessible. They came and gave us a presentation. They came back and answered questions and had a further detail on their initial offering. And it's cheaper, it's shorter. So we just thought in this kind of a climate where we need to be saving money, it makes sense. So we wanted to honor and empower our leaders for their good decision making, and as well their staff who are going to be pulling off those tests. That being said, the AIMSweb test will be used in grades 6, 7, and 8 throughout the year, fall, winter, and spring. But when we get to spring, after the state test, a thought was, well, why don't we give the AIMSweb math to the 5th graders after NSCAS, but give it to them before they leave for the summer, so that we have that incoming progress monitoring when they join 6th grade next year. And this was a wonderful idea, and I'll actually tell you something, we already did that this year. In other words, AIMSweb was piloted this spring on 5th graders and on 6 through 8. It was piloted and shown to have all the value that led to me coming to this meeting tonight. So again, 5th graders will be taking it so that they'll have valuable data, and educators will have valuable data to support them when they're in middle school. I list the tests for the high school, and I would just mention that the high school tests haven't changed. We started giving the 9th grade pre-ACT last year, twice per year, fall and spring, and we saw an improvement in students from fall to spring, and we're giving it this year from fall and spring. And the good news about that, we got feedback from the high school that giving it in September was a bit of a rush with everything else happening, so we pushed that back to October, just to give kids a chance and classes a chance, everyone a chance to gel. And I was talking with Miss Fawn over at the high school, and she's ready to go. They are ready to run the testing system. So I just wanted to bring these updates to your attention. There's some changes, but as you're in schools, someone could ask the question, where's MAP, or what are we doing, or when did Ames Web start? And I wanted to give a chance to bring that to this table, to this desk that is, and share with you. So some small updates, and these will be on our assessment website page as soon as I'm able to finish the Spanish translation, still working on those, and Somali and Arabic. But I just wanted to bring it to you first. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Dr. Dahl? Mr. Garcia Mendez.
Thank you. For people who might not know what the NAEP testing is, can you provide us some more context into that national testing and maybe the benefits and maybe downfalls? Or
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm going to have to bring that to the Board of Education Committee this coming month, and I will do that. I'll provide information to you that you could disseminate so that no one here in this meeting doesn't have it, but I just want to present a detailed answer, and I promise I won't stumble over the acronym. But I don't want I didn't bring preparation for that tonight. I just know that we have to do it, and so we want to do it well.
Anyone else?
One thing I'd add, by the way, because I was actually clamoring for details about the NAEP exam from the state, and they haven't provided those details yet. Okay. So I've actually begun the process, but I'll put something together so that we're ahead of the curve.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Dahl.
Thank you.
Item 6.2, remove and replace authorized signers for all GIPS bank accounts. Mr. Virgil Harden.
Good evening, board members. A rather routine thing when you have administrators switch out with the different responsibilities. So, of course, Dr. Schroeder left and I came back, and so Dr. Dexter left her position to do the secondary position, and of course, Dr. Stevens is the associate superintendent. So, I think in a previous board meeting, you approved a resolution to change the bank signers at 5 Points Bank. Worked great for those folks, but not so much for all the other banks. So needed a motion that just simply does the swap, and ubiquitous all bank accounts covers it. So just trying to be real efficient with that. So I conclude my comments with that.
Okay. Anyone have any questions over that? All right, moving on to 6.3, LB 243, Property Tax Authority Resolution. Mr. Virgil Harden.
All righty. Well, the legislature, in one of their many changes this last session, passed LB 243 and introduced a new concept into the arena of school finance. That concept is a property tax authority limitation, or cap. And so after a couple rounds of doing some calculations, NDE did certify to us what our cap will be for this next year. And so that cap affects two of the funds that we have levy on, which is the general fund and the special building fund. The general fund is $1.04 per $100 assessed valuation, and the special building fund is 1 cent. So $1.05, which is the cap maximum. For Grand Island, it in fact is the minimum and the maximum. And I can try to explain that a little bit later, but I won't drone on about school finance too badly, I don't think, other than to let you know that that cap, or that property tax authority, as certified by the Department of Education, is just a little over $45 million. So that includes a number of different pieces. A basic allowance for that amount. It's based on membership, LAP, and poverty. And so to put that in context, our property tax levy for the general fund for the 22-23 year was just over $41 million. If you add in the special building fund, the 1 cent is just under 400,000, so a total of $41,600,000. So that's what we actually asked for. That was a $1.05 levy to operate 22-23. So if this cap had been in place, we still would have been fine, but you can see that 41.6 million to 45 as the maximum, you're only a few $1,000,000 away from then. If you don't have authority, you simply can't access that property tax valuation in your levy. So that's the idea of the cap. So the resolution in front of you to consider this evening is for an additional 5%. That 5% is $5,845,605. So that would take our property tax authority limit to $50,980,000. And so I like analogies. I'm usually really bad at them. You'll have to let me know if I get this one right. So everybody familiar with a 5-gallon bucket, the home improvement buckets from Menards, Home Depot, wherever, right? So we have a 5-gallon bucket. It has 4 gallons in it. We're pouring another ½ gallon in it. Now we have 4.5 gallons in our 5-gallon bucket. We may only need 4 gallons. So next year we have a ½ gallon when we start. That's all this is doing, is letting us have an authority that then we can bank, and if needed, you or future boards can access that if and when needed. You are not, by passing this resolution, setting a levy or taxation. So it's a new concept. We have other caps. We have budget authority. We have the same exact process where we maximize our budget, but we do not spend the maximum budget that we pass. You passed a budget for the general fund last year, probably about $150 million. You'll probably only spend $125, $130 million. Same exact concept. So I'm just trying to give you some analogies, trying to understand the scope and size of it, where it's come from, why it's here, what it's about. And so I think I'll limit my comments to that and try to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Hardin? Okay. Mrs. Albers.
So, Mr. Hardin, if you had said that we don't really want to saddle future boards with not doing this, can you explain that a little bit, please?
I can. So I'm going to ask you to think about where you were in 1997. So a story goes back to 1997. The legislature passed a bill that said you can only grow your expenditures by a certain amount, but if you as a board wish to exceed that, you have by supermajority vote an additional 1% authority. Well, Grand Island in 1990, whatever, didn't quite have the same level or concentration of poverty and English language issues. So the board, for the first 7 years that was there, said no. So that took us to about 1999, 2000. I came on board talking to the legislature. They had a bill in the legislature that said, you don't tax your people at a certain level, you're getting no state aid. We were, if that bill had passed, we would have lost about $5 million of state aid that year because we didn't have the authority to tax or spend because of previous year board's decisions, because they just said, oh, we're conservative. Now, in their defense, because I've had this conversation before, I know that they made the best decision that they could at the time with the information that they had. They could not see into the future. They could not see the changing needs. I think we maybe have a better lens to make a decision with and know that our current state of affairs, as far as the needs that our students have, probably isn't going to change greatly. So what ended up happening is, I believe you remember the lawsuit, the Grand Island and a few other school districts. Well, part of that lawsuit was dropping those exclusions so we weren't held. We had a negative spiral happening where we kept losing the ability to grow by that compounded percent that we said no to. So by the time 7 years went by, we couldn't access every year. 7% of our additional growth was just gone. So they ended up throwing that measure out as part of the settlement. So that's what it took to get that fixed. It's a little history. More than you wanted, sorry.
Anyone else? Mr. Fisher.
Just a comment along those lines of what Virgil's just talking about. I think because the legislature is continually tinkering with the state aid formula, there is no crystal ball. There is no way to know what they're going to do that may benefit us or what they may be going to do that's going to negatively impact us. So I think any time that we have the opportunity to position ourselves better financially, and in this case, we're not going to ask for more taxes. We're just simply going to put more authority into our position so that later on, if something changes, we're as well positioned as possible. And so really, that's all this is. It's not, we're going to ask for $1.05 levy just like we've done for the last 20 years, because as Virgil said, that's, that maximum is really our minimum, because if we get extra dollars from the state, we know at the same time as our valuation grows, those dollars are going to go away. So again, it's really just a buffering measure to make sure that as the legislature changes how they're going to fund schools, that we're just in the best possible position.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hardin. Moving on to item 6.4, summer school reports with Dr. Dahl and Jill Butner.
Well, I have the honor of introducing Jill. She has been our summer school coordinator for
2 years officially.
for a while. And she's just streamlined it. She starts in October pulling teams together to just, what do we need? Where are we going to serve? What funding do we have? And then she works with HR and gets the hiring process, the payment process. And I think she's got it down to a science right now. But we had awesome programming this summer, and she's going to present on that.
All right, give me just a moment to get hooked up here. And I promised Mr. Sykes I would try to keep it around 5 minutes. I'm gonna try really hard. We'll see what happens. Nice shirt, by the way, nice bike. Okay. Then how, can I extend my screen?
Would it be better if you just do duplicate?
Well, my notes are on the presenter view.
Oh, yeah, we can. He wants to extend instead of duplicate.
Am I able to do that? I can wing it if I need to.
In that case, I think you're gonna have to.
Oh, that'll work. We're good. Nope, we are good.
How's your battery?
Oh, we're good. Yep. There we go. Ooh. Okay. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so as Dr. Dexter said, my name is Jill Butner, and I am trying to find my mouse. Got it. We're good. I have been doing summer programming, I think, since the second year that I arrived at GIPS. So that's about 7 years. Normally, I am teaching 7th grade math at Walnut Middle School. And then I coach volleyball, and like Dr. Dexter said, once volleyball ends, then summer begins. So it's crazy to think that summer starts in October for me. So, but there's a reason for that. So we're gonna go through, and I'm just gonna showcase the programs that we had this summer and the amazing things that happened. Everything that you're gonna hear tonight is not because of me. Everything that you're gonna hear tonight are because of the amazing leaders that we had working these programs, planning them, implementing the things that they came up with. So the praise that you want to give, it needs to be directed towards these individuals. So we're going to get started with our elementary program. So we had our Summer Strong program that was led by Chandra Myers and Maggie Mitkin. They also led our K-1 immigrant studies. Then we had an ELO program for our students there that Chandra took on as well in the afternoon. The Dodge Summer School was led by Melissa Rice, Howard by Julie Schnitzler, and then the Spectacular Summer was led by Ling O'Brien and Brianna McDonald. So some of the learning, it was focused in the areas of reading and math, as well as in STEM or the arts. Students engaged in multiple team building activities. Summer Strong students were able to select a book of their choice to take home, which was awesome. Spectacular Summer had different daily topics, such as Latin America, principles of electricity, and also environmental care. Those are some pretty big topics for elementary students. But our kids, we know that they can do it. Then we had Power Camp that was led by Hannah Luber, who just had a baby, so congratulations to her, and Bianca Ayala. Students learned how to use a compass, they planned how to run a zoo, and learned sign language as well. I have some pictures here. They also built rockets, they had balloon-powered cars, they built lanterns, learned how to play the card game Hand and Feet, several sculpture projects out of clay, art projects using watercolors. They used Ozobots to code and make an art project or to work around obstacles. They learned how to play kickball, they played dodgeball, and went on scavenger hunts all this summer there. Okay, we're getting into the things that are near and dear to my heart. So we had the summer academies at the 3 middle schools. With the ESSER money that came out of COVID, that gave us a chance to try something new. So previously with Summer Academy, it was very cut and dry and focused on reading and math. Our attendance was going down. We were really struggling to get kids to even just to show up. So we decided to try some things over the next few years with the ESSER funds, and I called around just a random sampling of a few districts that were around, and I asked them, what does your middle school summer programming look like? And the ones that I talked to, a lot of them were transitioning into this camp style where they were doing projects and different things like that, and they had moved away from the what you would consider the old, how we used to think of summer school as math and language arts. Still a work in progress. We're finding some things that are working, and we're still continue to work through those. Some really awesome things that happened this year. We had some amazing leaders. Jamie Barrientos was at Walnut, Claudia Demko-Rena was at Westridge, and Jess McHarg was at Barr. A few things you can see here. Walnut, they made blankets, tie blankets for veterans. One of the teachers, Erin Brooks, she shared a story with me. So they not only made blankets for veterans, but they thought of the elderly and they took some over to Tiffany Square. And the coordinator there was in tears because they thought of the elderly. They weren't forgotten. And so they really had a great impact to our community. They created string art through math concepts. I know a few of the schools had several community speakers. They did a nutrition lab, science behind paper airplanes, and then state fair projects. That was a requirement I gave all 3 of the coordinators. I said, you have to have quality projects at the state fair, and they did not disappoint. So here is one of them. Every year, the state fair, when it comes to their educational projects, they have a theme, and so they made sure to keep their projects around that theme, but I just thought that this was beautiful work that these students did. Some other specific things, Westridge used graphs, they did plotting, and the application of linear equations in that string art. They created a digital app to solve a problem. This was a display board based on a Nebraskan researcher or innovator is what this is. They also went on field trips. They walked around the fire station. They saw the Grand Island Emergency Center, the 911 center. They had different guest speakers. Bar, they had the Bar Amazing Race with 3 teams that competed in a scavenger hunt around the campus. They had to complete riddles and tasks along the way. They also got a donation from Dairy Queen to provide a sweet treat for the end of the day, so we also had that community partnership there as well. But they had some speakers too. They had a sports talk Thursday. They learned about conditioning, the nutrition lab. I mean, these kids, they learned not just math and language arts, but they learned so much more this summer. I talked about enrollment. This is not really something that we had really tracked in previous years. It's something that I will continue to start tracking. Going through documents, this was really the best information that I could find that I had access to. But from last year to this year, we did see an increase in enrollment from Walnut and Westridge. We did see a decrease at Bar, but with all of the changes at Bar, I'm wondering if that played a role in that. But something that we're wanting to continue to see is growth in that enrollment. We had our fine arts camp it was hosted at Walnut this year, led by Kyle Beeman. 71% of the students that applied were active participants. And each student that attended was able to take 3 different classes of their choice. The kids, they voted on what they wanted, and then they tried to meet those topics that those kids wanted. But the best part was they had former GIPS students coming back that were in the educational pathway, and they were teaching some of those classes. And that's just a great way to bring those kids back and hopefully become teachers here in a few years. Jumpstart, those of you that have been here know that this is my all-time favorite camp during the summer. I visited all 3 campuses during this, and at all 3 buildings, all 3 middle schools, students reported on having less anxiety. They loved meeting their teachers. They were excited that they could learn how to open their locker. They got to know the building, the food at some of them, but they really had a blast. The biggest thing, when I left each one, I found a few kids just to ask. Every single one I asked, do you feel better about the first day of school? And their answer was 100% yes. They are so glad that they came to that camp so they could experience what it was going to be like, meet their teachers, see some friends, meet some new ones, get excited about school. But you don't have to take my word for it. We're gonna see if this video works. Well, we'll see.
All right, what was the best part about Jumpstart?
Helping us get around the school and learning what classes are what. And then helping us get into our lockers.
And I know that those are just 2 students, but that was a common comment made by a lot of kids that attended Jumpstart. Again, talking about enrollment, all 3 buildings we saw an increase. And this was due to a lot of work done by the coordinators, a lot of work done by the building secretaries, by Mitch. There he is. Helped us out a lot by pushing out social media posts and sending out postcards, so it was a really great experience. We had our elementary ESY. Elementary students, they participated in age-appropriate activities related to the summer theme of Under the Sea or Water. Students continued to work to maintain skills gained toward individual goals during the school year, and they participated in a field day at the end of June that had activities related to their theme. Our secondary ESY, that includes our middle school and high school students. They participated in the age-appropriate activities also related to the Under the Water Sea and theme. And they participated in work-based tasks in the classroom and school building. This has been going on for a few years now, the robotics camp, led by Alex Kimnitz. It was 5 afternoons with 10 different robots. They had 6 high school students that came to counsel the middle school students, and then they had 20 middle school students attend. It was a really great experience for them. They did engineering design experiments like an egg drop, spaghetti towers. They learned how to code robots to solve a maze using VEX code coding language. Learned how to code an Arduino board using C++ coding language, used soldering irons to make electronic circuits, and learned about teamwork and perseverance. Okay, and then we had our high school summer programming. You want to take it from here?
You can
Okay.
share that. By the way, nice bike, Jill.
Thanks. 420 students total were enrolled. We had 351 pass, 1 or more classes, 21 seniors, 41 total summer grads. And then Dr. Dahl is going to talk about the students that we helped to get back on track in order to graduate.
Thank you again, Jill. Board of Education, just want to thank you. Don't usually get 3 opportunities to talk to you in 1 month. So it's interesting, all of the amazing work that Jill was doing with elementary and middle schoolers to make them able to start strong this school year. That's also what was happening at the high school with a slight difference. Starting strong for a senior meant that opportunity to graduate. And so 21 of the 28 students who were seniors, 12th graders that is, that took summer school classes graduated. That's 75%. Of course, we want to know what happens with those 7 students. Things are still being transcripted, so I don't want to say every door is closed or something, but I do want to say I went and visited one of them, and I gave him an encouragement and just said, hey, because he only had 1 class left to graduate. And I talked with Alex Niederklein about helping that one student. But every student has a story, so gosh, just that 420 students were in summer classes. That's 15% of about approximately 15% of GISH, mostly in English and math classes if you look at the 2 longest bars in that graph. On the second page, and I don't have anything else to display, just the little link there, but whoa, hope I didn't destroy the, something happened, but don't worry, we're all here. In terms of past credits, some of the elective credits were taken by ESL students and they received partial credit, but it's the structure of ESL classes. But in terms of pass rates, the class that had the highest pass rates were the ones I would say that are above 90. So economics, government, phys ed, personal finance, and world history won. So amazing to see that so many students came in. And also, I didn't say it on the first page, but 9th graders, largest number of A's. In other words, they came to go into summer school to get ready for the next year. So we celebrate what each grade level did. If we look at the last page, I'm just going to cut to the chase. How successful was summer school for GISH? 86% pass rate for all of the students that took all of the GISH classes that they were missing. So again, we might wonder, what about the 14%? We have work to do. Not all of the students that were missing classes were seniors, so we have work to do with those students in the coming years, and we'll continue to increase the size of summer school to support kids, as well as to have online options during the year. Those 12th graders, also just the pass rate by students themselves was really high, 95%, if we focused only on the student, not on the classes, but on the student. So I just want to celebrate. We're here starting another school year, but all this amazing work that happened in the summer that Mr. Fisher celebrated in today's Welcome Back, it really is a successful thing for students starting on the right foot for this school year, especially those from GISH, but also those from our elementary and middle schools. Thank you for your work. Again, great bike. Thank you. Oh, do you have any questions?
Any questions for Dr. Dahl or Mrs. Butner? Mrs. Juergens.
So I just want to start with a comment because I know you're a great teacher. I know that as a parent of students, former students of yours, and it wasn't lost on me all the name dropping you did. We are surrounded by some pretty incredible teachers here, and those numbers are speaking for themselves. I feel like you could probably anticipate higher engagement, higher enrollment over the summertime in the future because word is going to spread what you're doing.
That's what we're hoping.
I would assume, because hands-on learning is arguably superior to anything otherwise, right? And I feel like that's just going to stick with these kids, and what an opportunity for them. That's just beyond cool. One quick question I had was about transportation. So what sort of barriers are we working to overcome? Have you overcome?
So we do have one piece of transportation that takes our students from Title I elementary programs to Power Camp. That we've seen success on, and I believe we'll continue to do that. With the ESSER dollars, we did try to provide transportation to all of the other programs, and we tried that for 2 years, and it just was not successful. We would have anywhere from 0 to 3 students riding the giant buses, and we just did not see that that was a feasible expenditure, and so that's something that we kind of talked about at the middle level. You know, if a coordinator was willing to get one of the GIPS vans, you know, and go pick up a student here or there. Some of them are willing to do that, but having a contract with Holiday for the summer, for the general population of summer learning, it just hasn't worked for us. Great question.
All right. Mr. Garcia-Mendez.
Thank you. Yeah, transportation is a huge issue. I think we could all agree on that. My question is, for the summer programming, was there anything really geared to that newcomer population that's in our schools? And if so, what is?
Yes, sorry, I did not report on that. So at Bar and Walnut, there is a newcomer program for the summer. They are attached to the summer academies. They do their own learning, but then for different extension activities, they usually would join for those. So they are lumped in as a part of the summer academy at both Bar and Walnut. At the elementary, there was the kindergarten, first grade immigrant program that Chandra and Maggie led at West Lawn.
And high school.
And the high school.
And we had a newcomer program at the high school for EL and newcomers at Wyandotte, and it was packed.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 6.5, GIPS substitute rates and basis. Dr. Kohler.
I don't know if it's still on extend or not.
Good evening. We were looking for we needed to increase the substitute teacher pay for the year, and we also were looking for a process that would be more systematic for us moving forward. So of course, Mr. Virgil Harden came in to help me with that piece. And if you go ahead and look at the second part, it has the base salary that's indexed, the base salary that's non-indexed, and the total salary listed. That came down to the contracted days of 187 and how the per diem amount came into that. If you go back up to the top, off to the right-hand side, the percentages come off of those per diem for the sub rates. And then it even goes down to the incentives. Those come back and connect to the base salary. So we're wanting something so that every year when the base salary adjusts, these rates adjust as well. What questions do you have for me?
Any questions? No questions. All right. Thank you, Dr. Kohler. Moving on to 6.6, construction update. Mr. Dan Petch.
Thanks, VP Helinski. It's been a summer. I think I alluded last meeting that I had some concerns about locations getting ready for school. Good news, Kinnickren, we did turn the AC on Monday, so they're a lot happier. Still got work to do, but teachers are putting together their classrooms, and so we're going to be successful to be ready for kids come Tuesday. So good, but we'll still be there probably for another 6 weeks, I'm guessing, getting everything 100% completed, and then, of course, doing our punch lists. So security vestibules, on the other hand, not quite so good for Howard and Walnut. We're going to have to do a Plan B for those locations for the start of school. They're just not done. We just couldn't get it all done. Just not enough time. You guys didn't give me an extra month like I asked for. So I've talked with the principals, and we're pretty set on what we'll do there. We'll still be able to operate safely and get kids in the building. I anticipate it to probably take us another 3 weeks before we're actually able to open up those locations and use them the way they need to be. But it's looking good, and it's going to be fabulous when they are ready to go. So again, we'll still probably be there doing the punch list work. They always seem to drag that out for weeks and months, kind of thing, because you just can't get in and get the work done and finish off things. But we'll get it taken care of. High school had big concerns. Still a little nervous, but band room is complete. We've done that. We'll be moving them in here probably at least by Monday. And cafeteria, kind of that same story, as long as the floor guys can get the floor done. But it's we'll probably need to do a tour or something like that at some point in time. You look at that band room; it is spectacular with what we've been able to accomplish, the added space and the technology in there. And I think it's worth the pain. I've talked to the teacher as well, and he's really excited about being able to use that space, and so we'll be turning that over to him. And so that's kind of it. The other vestibules that we've done, other locations, will be operational for Tuesday. We've got our little gates piece taken care of as well, and so I'm really a little concerned about the other teachers in the building, because those classrooms look brand new now, and I think they're going to want the rest of the building to look brand new, and I don't think we're going to be able to accomplish that this next year, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to conclude my report there, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mr. Petch? You're not planning on shutting the air conditioning off again, are you?
Negative.
Okay.
And just an FYI, most likely this will be the last time you're going to get to ask me questions on construction reports, because I think we're going to all be talking about, if I am in here next month, will be how's the punch list going. So we don't want to talk about that.
Well, thank you for your hard work, sir, and your team as well. So,
thank you.
All right, moving on to 6.7 policy. Mr. Fisher.
Well, the good news is we only have 4 additional policies. 3 of the 4 come from legislative action. We actually get to talk about one tonight that was just something we needed to take care of. And that would be this first one here, certified staff credit for experience. Several years ago, the negotiated agreement was changed to allow for 10 years of experience for staff members coming to our district. So if a staff member had worked 10 or more years in other districts, they would be able to bring those 10 years of experience for placement on our salary schedule. Previously it had been 8, got changed in the negotiated agreement, had never got changed in policy. So this is simply a change to align the policy with what's in the negotiated agreement. Pretty simple, straightforward stuff there. Questions on that? Okay, special education. Again, this is some changes that came from the attorneys and follow up to the legislative action this past session. And as you look here, there are a few different things as we'll roll through this. Somewhere up here I missed. It's up here at the beginning. Yeah, right there. There's 2 places where this statement through the age of 21. Well, we've always provided services through the age of 21, but in the policies that we had previously, that was not specified, and the attorney feels like that needs to be specified. And then we get down here to where the actual changes are. And these changes are around suspension of students who have IEPs. And then, as you can see here, basically there was some language that was struck and replaced with some different language. And really what that is all based around is when you are going to change the placement of a special ed student, you have to have manifestation, determination done that would say that this need for change in their placement, suspension, reassignment, whatever it is not a result of their handicapping condition. So basically that's what this language is around. It just basically, it lays out some of the timelines. It talks about that within 10 days, that decision has to be made, and that manifestation hearing has to be done. So that's what the language is there, and I believe that's all the language change. Oh, no, there is this one other one. That's right. This was a total added addition sectional here on this accessibility to IEPs. Again, something that's really pretty much always been done, but as far as I know, somewhere it evidently wasn't done, or the legislators wouldn't have been dealing with it. But basically says that a child's IEP shall be accessible to all regular education teachers, special education teachers, related service providers, and other service providers who are responsible for the IEP's implementation. Well, it's kind of a duh one, you know, if we're going to ask people to implement the IEP, then we probably ought to share what that IEP says with them. So, and again, it's something that certainly won't change any of our operational procedures. It's what we've always done. It just now has to be in policy. And I believe that is it for this one. So questions on that? Any questions there? Again, these ones that we're looking at right now are on the first read. We'll look at them again next month in second read format. Okay, behavioral points of contact. This was directly out of the legislature this year, that basically, and if you read that, the superintendent is delegated the authority to designate one or more behavioral awareness and health points of contacts for each school building. So for us, we've designated either the counselor or the social worker in each of our buildings to be that behavioral point of contact. And basically, as you read on down through that, it says that we have to share who that point of contact is with NDE, and we also need to post that on the websites. So we are in the process of getting all of that done. I know Dr. Summers is working with NDE to make sure that we get all of that reporting done, and we're working to get those names posted on our website. So, questions about that policy, other than why? So weapons and firearms in school. This is just starts out as just a minor modification of the policy that we have. If you recall, the legislature passed a bill that would allow for concealed carry without any permitting this last session. So attorneys felt like it would be in school's best interest to add that statement that you see there in red. It's unlawful for any person to possess a firearm, including concealed firearms. Again, just to make it clear to the public that even though the law says you can carry it, you can't in a school. So that statement was added. And then as we were working with the policy committee, just a couple changes to the wording that we had in our policy already just some clarification. We felt like while we were dealing with this policy, we probably might want to clean this up a little bit. And so this policy goes on and it talks about, this is just weapons in school. We're not talking about firearms anymore. Now we're talking about weapons in school. And that statement there, the knowing and intentional possession, use, or transmission of a dangerous weapon or personal safety product other than a firearm is prohibited. And then the term personal safety product, which actually that was where the question came up. Well, a personal safety product is not really necessarily a dangerous weapon. When you see a personal safety product includes any personal safety or security device such as tasers, mace, and pepper spray. And so again, that was just a clarification that the wording said dangerous weapon. Well, those probably aren't really dangerous weapons. So when we're talking about the dangerous weapon side of it, that would probably be knives or anything else that you would normally consider a weapon. So anyhow, that was just a little wording clarification that was done there. And then we had some discussion around, okay, is there a need for, you know, those personal safety products that might exist? And if you read through the whole thing, that this last sentence that's here, a student shall not carry a personal safety or security device during the school day, we felt like really clarifies things. The intent of this policy is that students would not have those on their person during the school day, so that in the protected school environment, there shouldn't be a need for them. But when you're in an outside the school day situation, you're at an activity, you have to walk to the parking lot after a game, whatever it is, then we're not saying you can't have those things. It's just, you know, that's where that clarification was. So as we talked through it, we felt like that was probably where we wanted to take the wording to. So questions around that? Okay, that is all I have at this point.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Fisher. Moving right along to Section 7, Action Item 7.1, stipends for MTSS and assessment coordinators. Dr. Kohler. Any questions for Dr. Kohler? All right, seeing none, I would seek a motion. Mrs. Albers.
Motion to approve stipends for MTSS and assessment coordinators as presented.
Second by Mr. Garcia Mendez. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, go ahead and vote. Motion passes. 7.2, GIPS subrate and basis. Again, Dr. Kohler, any questions for Dr. Kohler on this agenda item? Seeing none, I'd like to seek a motion. Mrs. Albers.
Motion to approve the GIPS substitute rate and basis as presented.
And a second? Second by Mrs. Malden. Any other discussion? Go ahead and vote. Motion passes. Move along to 7.3, removal and replace authorized signers for all GIPS bank accounts. Mr. Harden. Any questions for Mr. Harden? Seeing none, I would seek a motion. Mrs. Albers.
For the record, my computer is frozen, so I'm kind of winging it here. Motion to approve the motion to remove and replace authorized signers for all GIPS bank accounts as presented.
Second?
Yeah, look at that.
Second.
Second by Mr. Garcia Mendez. Any other discussion? All right, place your vote. Motion passes. Moving on to 7.1, LB 243, Property Tax Authority. Now, on this one, I do need to read this for the record. Whereas the Nebraska legislature enacted several measures this past legislative session, including LB 243, to adjust the public school district revenue and finances, and whereas LB 243 generally limits a public school district property tax request authority subject to limited exceptions, and whereas LB 243 includes an exception to generally allow the school district to otherwise exceed the default property tax request authority if at least 70% of the Board of Education votes in favor of the increased request, and whereas the Board of Education of a school district with an average daily membership of more than 3,045 students, but no more than 10,000 students, may increase its tax request by an additional 5% above the base growth percentage, and whereas the school district's average daily membership is more than 3,044 students, but is less than 10,000 students. And whereas, due to rising enrollment and students and staffing needs, and the need to maintain its budgetary obligations, the Board of Education of Hall County School District Number 2, also known as Grand Island Public Schools, the district, hereby desires to increase its base growth percentage by additional 5% or maximum amount as permitted by law, and whereas public notice of this possible increase was published in a legal newspaper of general circulation in the school district at least 1 week prior to this board meeting. Now therefore, be it resolved that the persistent to Section 5 of the 2023 Nebraska Laws 243, at least 70% of the Board of Education of the school district affirmably votes to increase the school district's overall property tax request authority by an additional 5% above the base growth percentage or the maximum amount as permitted by law. The superintendent or designee is hereby authorized and directed to take any action consistent with this resolution to ensure the school district's overall property tax request compliance with this resolution. All right. It's a lot of whereas and legal mumble jumble. But I do need to have a motion. Mr. Hawley.
I'd make a motion to approve the resolution as read into the public record.
All right. The second? I'm sorry, I didn't miss it. Was that Mrs. Molden? Okay. No? Oh. Seconded by Mrs. Molden. Any other discussion over this? Mr. Harden, do you want to add anything?
No, I'm just here to answer questions.
That's what I meant by that. Sorry. All right. So let's go ahead and place our votes. Resolution passes. 7.5, 3315, attendance officer on final read. Mr. Fisher.
Okay, so this attendance officer one, this was a very simple change. Basically, if you look at that, it now says 90%. And the intent for this was to move away from the number of days where you would not really look at necessarily something within the first few days of a school year. You might miss a number of days, and that might not show up until later on in the year. This, by saying 90%, so as long as they're in attendance 90% of the days, then you're going to better be able to address things as the year moves along rather than waiting till the end of the year. That was the intent of changing to the 90% piece. So, any questions on that?
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? All right, seeing none, I need to seek a motion. Mr. Hawley.
I'd make a motion to approve policy 3315, attendance officer as presented.
And a second? Seconded by Mr. Garcia Mendez. Any other discussion? Go ahead and place your votes. Motion passes. 7.6, policy 8462, metal detector screening on final read. Mr. Fisher.
Okay, this is an entirely new policy that basically gives guidelines for the utilization of wand, handheld type metal detectors, really anywhere in the district, once people are properly trained in the use of those.
Any questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion. Mr. Hawley.
I'd make a motion to approve policy 8462, metal detector screening as presented.
Second? Seconded by Mr. Garcia Mendez. Any other discussion? Seeing none, go ahead and place your votes. Motion passes. 7.7, policy 8340, part-time enrollment on final read. Mr. Fisher.
Okay, again, this was a policy that came out of legislative action this last session, which basically changed what schools could require of non-full-time students. So students that maybe would come from a homeschool setting. Previously, you could require them to be enrolled in at least 2 classes in order to be eligible to participate in activities. The legislature took that down to schools only having the ability to require up to 1 class. And so that's really what is involved in this one. There's several different places, there's some language, but really this number 9 piece here is the heart of this. It basically says that you can only require 1 class.
Any other questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion. Mr. Hawley.
I'd make a motion to approve policy 8340, part-time enrollment as presented.
And a second? Seconded by Mrs. Albers, excuse me. All right, any other discussion? All right, seeing none, go ahead and place your votes. Motion passes. 7.8, policy 9410, student groups on final read. Mr. Fisher.
Okay, this student group, again, came out of a legislative bill. It really was called the Boy Scout bill because the Boy Scouts would be the one group we probably would be most familiar with that fits those recognized youth organizations that are identified by the federal government in this 36 U.S.C. Subtitle 2 Part B. There's actually quite a few organizations there, Boy Scouts being only one of them. But in effect, what it says is that if an organization wishes to, and the highlighted piece there, each requesting youth organization will be permitted to provide information at school at least once during each school year. So that would allow those organizations that fit this guideline to be able to come to school and present information to students.
Any other questions?
We have to work with them to determine how best to do that.
Any other questions for Mr. Fisher? All right, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion. Mr. Hawley.
I'd make a motion to approve policy 9410, student groups as presented.
Second? Seconded by Mrs. Maldine. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none, go ahead and vote. Motion passes. 7.93, policy 8453, suspension, expulsion, and reassignment on final read.
Okay, again, changes in the legislature dictated some changes in some of the timelines that we use when we are suspending students. And so actually that's the first part of this. Some of the other things that were addressed in that legislative piece and therefore are addressed in this bill. During a suspension, students could not be required to attend alternative programs. You may offer that as an option for them, but they cannot be required to be in an alternative education program during the time of the suspension. So that was one of the big pieces. And again, there's the whole explanation of all of the different timelines that have to be in place. And I know that Dr. Dexter has worked with the secondary where most of our suspensions are going to take place, as far as really helping them to understand those timelines. And then the other piece, when you get down to number 6 here, no pre-kindergarten through 2nd grade student may be suspended from school. Now, we can still do in-school suspensions with them, we just can't do out-of-school suspensions.
Any other questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, and entertain, I'm sorry, Mrs. Albers.
How often are pre-K or K suspended? Has that happened?
It probably happens, probably more than we realize, but not a lot. And it's got to be a pretty extreme situation in order for us to, and you know, I guess the reality is if it's an extreme enough situation, we can still do an emergency exclusion, which would, you know, allow us to have that student out for a period of time. You know, it's, hopefully it doesn't create a situation. Now, if you read through that, if the student brings a weapon or some of those kind of things, you can still suspend in some of those situations. But it's, you know, it's probably okay. It's probably not going to impact us much. It's an unfortunate piece that the legislature has decided that they need to insert themselves and not allow, you know, local schools to make decisions about things that they probably really ought to be making the decisions about. But it is what it is.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I entertain a motion. Mrs. Albers.
Motion to approve 8453 suspension, expulsion, and reassignment as presented.
And second? Seconded by Mr. Hawley. Any other discussion? Please place your votes. Motion passes. Item 710, Policy 7490, Alternative Education on final read. Mr. Fisher.
Just another place where alternative education and suspension go together, and so it's really it's the same concept in a different policy. That basically we may offer a student alternative school as part of the suspension, but we cannot require it. It's just another place where we've got a policy around that. So,
any other questions for Mr. Fisher? All right, seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion. Mrs. Albers.
Motion to approve 7490 alternative education as presented.
And second? Second by Mrs. Malden. Any other discussion? Seeing none, go ahead and place your votes. Motion passes. 7.11, Policy 7510, Option Enrollment on final read. Mr. Fisher.
okay, this policy we actually are looking at putting an entirely different policy in place. It really has all the same pieces that the existing policy has. It's just the attorney's language so that we align with the attorney's policy throughout rather than just making the changes that the attorney was recommending. And really the changes deal with our ability to set capacity limits around special ed students. And so really the statement that's highlighted there, the Director of Special Education shall review on a case-by-case basis all option applications for students that would receive or could be eligible to receive special education or related services. So in other words, rather than setting numbers, which we've previously had done in the resolution that was passed annually in October. You can't set those numbers around what your special ed capacities are. You actually have to look at that on a case-by-case basis, is really what it says. And we've already started dealing with it. Dr. Summers has done a review with Renee Engel, our special ed director, on one option enrollment, and we've actually accepted several students that have IEPs because we could accommodate them, and we've declined one because we could not accommodate the needs without adding additional staff. So that's how it works. That's how it will work.
Any other questions for Mr. Fisher? Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion. Mrs. Albers.
Motion to approve 7510 option enrollment as presented.
And second? Seconded by Mr. Hawley. Any other discussion? Seeing none, go ahead, place your votes. Motion passes. Item 712, Policy 7511, Option Enrollment Resolution. On final read, Mr. Fisher.
Okay, actually, what I'm going to ask that you do with this at this point in time is to table it till October, because October is normally when we would adopt the resolution. We could approve the policy right now, but there's really no reason to. You're going to turn around and you're going to have to approve the resolution again in October. So, and really the only thing that the difference between now and October is, that gets us a little further into the year. We can maybe do some estimates around where we think our numbers, our capacity for all of our different grade levels would be, because that's really what we're going to be looking at setting in terms of that at this point in time is, what we would do with the different numbers as far as the capacities. And we'll probably realistically set them lower than what we expect because, we want to be able to have that option to decide, okay, we don't want to have to add staff for option students because that isn't efficient operation. Unless we have enough to create a whole nother section and we get enough. And for us, it doesn't make sense because we're not getting extra dollars because we're never going to get to a net positive option position. So we can only, we're really only going to be interested in taking ones that would help fill out sections that we're already teaching. So like I said, I'm going to just ask that you table that one till October. There's no reason to act on it now and then turn around and act on it again in October.
Any other questions for Mr. Fisher on this? All right, seeing none, and we have to table the issue, make sure that if you do make the motion to table, that you give a month as well. So I am seeking a motion at this time. Mrs. Albers.
The month that you want to hear it in October?
Yeah, October.
Okay.
Got to do it by October, the 15th of October, so.
Okay.
When we want to do the resolution.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 7511, no. I'd like to make a motion to table 7511 option enrollment resolution until October.
And a second? Seconded by Mr. Hawley. Any other discussion? Seeing none, go ahead and place your votes. And motion to table has passed. All right, moving along to Agenda 8.1, Grand Island Public Schools Foundation Report. Mrs. Carrie Hookerleap.
Good evening. Look at all these beautiful faces. I'm going to start off by actually saying what a wonderful day today was. It was one of our foundation's most fabulous days, one of our top 2, and that's Teacher of the Year. And I know everybody actually was there and you got to celebrate with these teachers. But for public record, I would love to be able to say their names again. So I'm going to do that. And we honored our elementary school teacher, Amy Anderson, year 36 of teaching. She's a 4th grade teacher at Howard. Middle school teacher was Marla Richling. She's an orchestra teacher for Westridge, Walnut, and Barr. High school teacher was Jessica Whitmire, business teacher at Gish. Specialist counselor, Kristen Schultz, Lincoln Elementary. Non-teaching staff was Angel Rojas Acevedo, and he is at West Lawn Elementary School. He's a bilingual paraeducator. And then our administration is Caitlin Jensen, assistant principal at Engelman. I can tell you, last year I was down in the front and just being sure that nobody fell. It was a great job. But to be up there, to see their faces, to be able to see their expression when they received their certificate was just filled my heart with joy. So we'll move on to legacy grants updates. This past month, we gave out our Eugene Miller Legacy Grant. That grant is for extending education for our teachers. And it was given to Kaylee Seller, and it's $1,000. And it's just investing back into our teaching quality. And she is a freshman English teacher at Gish, currently working on her master's in English at UNL. We do 16 legacy grants at the foundation. Over the past school year, we provided some amazing grants, such as Simple Acts of Kindness, grants that included school clothes, shoes, bras, caps, gowns, dental care, eyeglasses. We provided additional educational opportunities, guest conductors for musical programs, mental health counseling, and even impactful sports programs. That means we provided 56 different grants in the total of $49,571. Our legacy grants are able to fill those voids to give hope, to assure students have what they need to be successful each and every day. And then finally, August 15th is our opening of our classroom grants. That is providing our teachers an opportunity to give their students out-of-the-box curriculum. So it's not that basic, it's just going above and beyond. And some of that curriculum, like our robotics program, was started with a grant from the foundation. I'm quick, but I'm going to yield the rest of my time to Maggie McDermott, our annual giving coordinator. She's going to talk about Harvest.
Thanks, Carrie. Good evening, everyone. I'm here to give you some details about our Harvest Gala we have coming up. The foundation is going to host its second annual fundraising gala at Riverside on September 28th this year. Last year was our inaugural year. We brought in over $141,000 to support foundation programs like classroom grants, scholarships, and the Teacher of the Year program. Again, those of you that attended this morning, the Welcome Back, witnessed firsthand how that impacts our district as a whole. So the foundation always aims to outdo itself. This year, our goal for Harvest is $170,000. To help us reach this goal, we have partnered with Tom Dinsdale Automotive as our presenting sponsor. We will also have a live and silent auction, and we've secured some pretty unique packages that you can check out on our website. I'd like to give a big thank you to Mr. Holinsky for securing Grand Island Little Theater tickets for us again this year, so thank you. During the Harvest Gala, we plan to hold a mini campaign called Fund a Mission with a goal of raising $10,000. The foundation chooses one of its programs each year for this mini campaign. This year, we've opted for our classroom grant program. Since 2004, our classroom grant program has awarded $280,398, funding 311 educational opportunities that have directly impacted 58,463 students in the classroom. So we are hoping to boost that classroom grant budget a little bit. At Harvest, speaking about his experience receiving and implementing a classroom grant will be Walnut Middle School Integration Specialist, Mr. Ben Martin. If you've met Mr. Martin, you know his enthusiasm is contagious, and we expect this will encourage donations to the Fund a Mission campaign. The foundation will again present its Heart of the Foundation Award, and we'll have some local faces on hand helping us run the show. Brian Gallagher will MC, and Phil Week will act as our auctioneer. Additionally, we'll have dessert dash, games, and a raffle. Mr. Fisher has graciously donated one of the cash prizes needed for our games, so thank you, Mr. Fisher. I would encourage all of the board members to follow Mr. Fisher's lead. We're still in need of cash prizes for some of our games, so if you'd like more details on that, feel free to reach out to me. Other things you can do to support the gala: purchase a ticket to the event, share our social media posts, donate a silent auction item, or participate in the silent auction mobile bidding if you can't attend the gala. So your support truly sets the precedent for others to follow your lead. The Board of Education has always been one of our biggest champions, and we appreciate that. So we hope to see you all at Harvest. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, ladies. Moving along here, 8.2, Superintendent Report, and Mr. Fisher is going to come riding in on his Harley again, right? No. No? Okay.
Sorry, for those watching online, I'm totally that guy. Thank you.
All right. My bad. Again, I think having board members there, I think really adds to the event. I think the people that are there appreciate seeing your commitment to them. And so I think that was really good. Overall, I thought the event was great. Certainly, thanks to Mitch and Jennifer for the work that they did to really get things orchestrated, and then all of the people that were a part of that event today. I think Dave did a great job in his message. Overall, it was just a good day, and you know, it's just not every day you get to ride your motorcycle in the school. Hey, nothing wrong with that.
No policies against that, right?
I don't think so. Well, it's the first time I've got to, so, you know, well, it was the second time because I got to test drive it yesterday, so. So, also just wanted to mention, you know, along with the full welcome back, we also, you know, had a welcome event for our new teachers last Friday, and then they continued to work through Monday. So, yeah, another nice event. GIEA provided a really nice breakfast for them that Friday, and then I think provided lunch on the second day. And so, again, I think we're doing a lot of really good things, hopefully to help staff members feel supported and appreciated. And I think if you listen to Mr. Scherenbrock's message, one part of it said that 65% of people, what they really want is that acknowledgement of what they're doing. And so I think that is really, really very important. So the big, you know, certainly the big days are the 15th and the 16th coming up when we're going to have kids in the school. 15th, we've got the kindergarten 6th and 9th graders, and then the next day it's go time. And so certainly excited about getting things underway. Otherwise, just some things coming up that I did want to mention. Area membership, I think quite a few of you are signed up for area membership. School Boards Association, State School Boards Associations, for those of you that are new board members, these area membership meetings are the closest meetings that you're ever going to have in terms of being able to get to them fairly easily. They're, you know, I think start about 4:30 in the afternoon, run till 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening. So their time frame doesn't require a huge commitment. So it certainly would encourage all of you to if you can make it fit in your schedule. And there are 2 dates and places. You know, the York date is August 24th, so that's coming up fairly quickly, and I think at least Josh is signed up for York. I don't know if anyone else is signed up in York. I think Dr. Stevens is signed up in York. As Josh pointed out the other day, the meal in York is actually better.
See? I'm surprised.
So, and then Kearney is September 13th. And I think we've got quite a few of the board members that are signed up there. And so, again, you still have time to sign up. I think you can even sign up at the event. So if you didn't know till the very end that you could make it work, and I think we can still get you in there. I think all of the board members are going to receive some form of recognition, except for Lisa. I think she's probably maxed out on what her, you get certain you get points for different things. So anyhow, there will be, some recognition there. So, if that's something that you're craving, you'll have that opportunity there. The other item that I wanted to mention coming up at Labor Relations in Lincoln, October 4th and 5th. Those of you that are going to be a part of the negotiation process, I think might want to consider that one. A lot of usually good information around, just what's going on, with legal pieces of negotiations, and usually that's when we find out what insurance rates are going to do and some things like that. So again, just back of your mind, maybe think about that October date. We'll talk about it again in September. The last thing that I wanted to talk real briefly about, yesterday I did an interview with NTV News on social emotional learning. Evidently it must have aired today. I haven't seen it, but I had a couple people that told me that they saw me. And we knew this was coming, so we had our leadership team kind of work up some pieces that we felt like for Grand Island Public Schools, what social emotional learning meant. And again, I think different arenas have spun social emotional learning to be all kinds of different things. But so we felt like we probably needed a basis. And so you as board members, I wanted to share this so that you had this too, in case, you were asked about it. It was a topic that our legislators in one of their interim sessions discussed. And again, I think they had maybe some misinformation, or again, maybe they're getting their information from somewhere else. But as far as what social emotional learning really means for us, I think that last sentence that's there, I think is really good. At Grand Island Public Schools, it's as simple as teaching students to be respectful of other people, to have good relationships with their family and friends, and to make good decisions. That's what social emotional learning is about. And, we have to, we have things in it that the legislature has mandated. We have to do bullying prevention. We have to talk about dating violence. Those are all things that fall under social emotional learning, and they're dictated by the legislature. And now the legislature's questioning whether we should be doing social emotional. So it's anyhow, just wanted you to have that, so that as you are potentially approached about it and what are we doing with social emotional learning, this is what we put together. Those people that work with our curriculum, those people that work with our buildings on a regular basis, this is what we feel like we're doing at Grand Island Public Schools around social emotional learning. Questions on that? Or anything else? That was all I had.
Questions for Mr. Fisher? All right, seeing none, moving on to section 9, where notification of upcoming board meetings. There's a budget workshop Thursday, September 14th at 5:30, and then of course our regular Board of Education meeting will be Thursday, September 14th. It says 6:30 on here, is that correct? Okay. So, okay. So note the time change on that. It's an hour later. And with, right.